Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Hands Across the Water. We are a multi-generational podcast. I am one of your three co-hosts, Andy Nichols. Always happy to be back here with my two friends of the other multi-generations that are the kind of central talking point of this podcast. Joining me again, as always, my buddy Beatley Tone across the water.
Hi, Andy.
And really, really close, not across the water, about less than an hour away, is my buddy Kyle, Hand on the Run. Hi, Kyle.
Yep, just across the Hudson. Hey, Andy.
And I get to borrow your line where nothing is off the table.
Nothing is off the table.
Including your hot takes, which are hotter than Jeff Slate's.
I wouldn't go that far, man.
But it's good to see you boys on here again for our first topic discussing Paul. And Paul has been in the news this week, and as of this recording date, he's actually playing right now, or have just finished up playing with Bruce Springsteen at Anfield in Liverpool, and came out, as we long suspected. Paul had made his annual trip to Liverpool for the LIPA graduation this past week. Some lovely photographs, and a dear old friend of mine, Dory Howard, Liverpool Hope University class of 2012, who works at LIPA, got to meet Paul in the flesh. So congratulations to you, Dory. And I hope your heart is still exploding with joy to meet Paul at LIPA. It was incredible. Bruce did a couple of things there. There was a presentation of Bruce's music there at LIPA. And of course, there were two gigs. And it was long rumored that Paul was going to play with Bruce tonight, and he did. And he came out and did Can't Buy Me Love, and I think he came back out again later for Twist and Shout. Kyle, we have some video footage of Can't Buy Me Love, don't we?
Kansas City as well.
Yeah. That's right, Nick. Your city was represented, Nick Siret. Kyle, let's see a little clip of tonight's performance of Can't Buy Me Love.
Yeah, why not?
Paul McCartney. Can't buy me love.
Love it, man.
Yeah.
I love
the great voice.
He had the nice he had a different look tonight. Nice little purple thing going.
It was one of those sort of crinkly jackets. If you saw the pictures on Facebook, if you look at it, I had to close it because I wasn't sure if he even still had his beard. But it's one of those jackets that are all they're all creasy and crinkly.
Yeah,
like a Cas Jack.
Very, very Cas looking Jack. He's still got the beard. He's still got the look going. But Paul back in Liverpool at Anfield.
I don't know how he managed to have so much hair at his age.
I don't know, but
it's criminal.
I know.
Sounds great. He looks great. And Andy, the funny mirroring about this one is that when we saw Paul at MetLife in New Jersey, Bruce's home state, Bruce came on for Paul's show. Bruce is in Liverpool, and then Paul comes on for his show. How funny is that?
That's pretty iconic and very appropriate considering those two. And it's nice that Bruce reciprocated and when Paul's home city and did that thing again. So you had a feeling that was going to happen. I know our dear friend Joan had FOMO. She was like, I should be there, but Joan, you'll survive. Okay, you'll survive. Trust me, it'll be all good. It'll be all worth it. But exciting news these last few days with Macca. And it just so happens that this is our first Paul McCartney topic on Hands Across the Water. So it makes sense that we had a little bit of a Paul news segment with that. Other than that, things are pretty good, guys. And today we are going to talk about the 1979 Wings UK tour. 17 dates. That one tour that really has one of our co-hosts was fortunate enough to attend not once, not twice, but 3 times. And we are going to get Beatley Tone's kind of first-hand take on what it was like to be there at the time, to get tickets. We've got some nice video clips to show you from the time as well, some performances, some great footage from fans queuing up, hearing about what it was like, their experience. Maybe we can even see a younger Tony in one of these. We don't know. We have to see. He might be in one of these clips. We have to see. But it's all going to be encompassed in today's show. to it. And it really is the lost live album that should have came out. And we've only got it. We've got the wonderfully pro soundboard recording of Last Flight, which is from the show in Glasgow towards the end of the tour on December 17th, 1979, which was in between the dates that you first saw him too, right, Tony?
Yeah, I think Glasgow was, Glasgow was at the end of the tour, but I also went to Kampuchea, so that happened after. The dates that that I went were the 7th, the 9th, and the 10th of December.
Before we get into Tony's first Hands Across the Water experience, as a reminder, make sure to follow us on Instagram if you want to see some more archival clips of the podcast. Sometimes archival clips mixed with clips of the podcast, when we get a little fancy. And also, if you're not already, make sure to subscribe, because we love to try and bring you breaking news as soon as it happens, especially when it was like the mono box set and whatever else might be announced this year. Christmas releases, you'll hear about it here first on Hands Across the Water. Nice intergenerational take on whatever has the Beatles community buzzing. Show topics, anything like that, email address is also going to be in the description. Normally we make playlists on Spotify and Apple Music, but not in today's show. But make sure to check out our link tree below for some past playlists that we've made for our 5 astounding, world record-breaking, life-changing episodes.
And I suppose we should also thank the 496 people that have already subscribed in our short 6-week life, which is just fantastic response. So thank you everyone that has subscribed to the channel. On
that same note, I'd like to thank everybody for your comments on our most recent episode, which is on Let It Roll, which was our kind of reimagined Let It Roll George Harrison compilation. Thanks a lot, Joe Mayo, for your lovely feedback and candor always on that episode. And
all
the
right,
comments. Hi, Joe. That episode recently just reached 1,000 views. So thank you for checking that episode out as well. And we'll have more of that in the future as we move on across the water. So the 1979 Wings UK tour. Tony, you were there real time. Kyle is not even a thought in the cloud. Neither am I at this point. What's it like? What's a day in the life for Beatley Tone in 1979 with your Beatle and Paul fandom? Now, you've told us you've been well on into the Beatles since about 1976.
Yeah.
So you're 3 years into your fandom now. You bought London Town as your first new album. I know that. Now you've bought Back to the Egg, and now there's a chance to see Wings on tour. So you must have just been like, wow, this is exciting, right?
Yeah, really exciting. This is ticking days off a calendar territory. I think when it was announced, very much excited to see them, because I was too young to see them in 1975, and I wasn't into the Beatles then or Paul McCartney then, so it wouldn't have even crossed my mind. But once I'd heard Wings Over America, I was like kicking myself that I'd only just missed it. But they're the breaks, I suppose. But as far as my life goes in those days, well, I would have been 18 when this happened. I was working in a bank, hating every minute of it. I hated it so much that I stayed in banking for only about 35 years.
You must have despised it. Yeah,
I really hated it. It got better. But yeah, that was sort of my life at that time. But just so into the music. That year I would have bought the George Harrison self-titled album, came out that year as well. And obviously Back to the Egg. And when Back to the Egg came out, every time Paul was interviewed on the radio, I remember he did quite a lot of radio promotion for the album. I'd be listening sometimes with Linda, sometimes without. I kind of remembered that, used to tape it, from the radio. So, I was fairly obsessed, I suppose, at this stage. I'm only sort of 3 years into the journey.
I love this image of you of just being 18. Your whole life is ahead of you. The world's at your fingertips. All this
Yeah.
amazing music coming out in 1979, and now you're going to see Paul and Wings.
Let's steer it now into looking at Paul McCartney's world in 1979 as it was. Okay. They'd done the big tour of 75 and 76 over the world. Linda got pregnant again and had James in 1977. They made London Town, then took an easy approach, and touring wasn't really going to be on his mind at that point. Linda, as we know, Linda was not actually a big fan of touring. She did it because she loved her husband and she supported him, but she wasn't really fond of touring. And touring, again, staring down the barrel of promoting an album with a new band, okay, because Wings Mark IV ends with Jimmy McCulloch and Joe English leave, and now two guys come in, and now Paul's promoting videos for London Town with the two members of Wings, with Lawrence Juber and Steve Holley, and things like With a Little Luck video and the I've Had Enough video. So it's weird. And then he just jumps in, does an album with them. It drops in 79. And then in the summer of 79, just finishes Back to the Egg and then locks himself up and records by himself all of McCartney too. But Wings is still a thing. Wings still exists. Wings is still, they're not done, but he locks himself up in Scotland with synthesizers in the lab and goes mad and makes an album called McCartney 2, which comes out the following year, but then finishes that and then says, okay, now let's go on a tour. It's very odd, the timing of all this.
Yeah, I think that because you know, in that summer, he created the songs that became McCartney 2, but I seem to remember him saying, you know, that they were just that, you know, it was just a bunch of experimental stuff, and he said that he played some of the songs to friends and something, and realized then that this could possibly be an album. So I think he was probably still focused on Wings, and what he did on McCartney 2 was kind of what he maybe was doing in his spare time, maybe.
Yeah, but I also think that what makes Paul such an interesting figure to study is that he always has at least two things on his mind. He's never completely focused on one project. He'll have one thing on the surface and then another undercurrent that he's thinking about, whether it's the Wings college tour and like the Bruce McMouse or something like that. He's always got another thing. So I think that it's possible that his desires, his goals were split. That yes, he still had Wings, but I think that the reality was setting in with him. That after attempt after attempt, band after band, he's just like, this is never gonna be what I really wanted it to be. So I think that even if he might say that he was doing recording, just doing experiments, I think we can armchair psychologist a little bit and say he probably just had a huge amount of freedom, finally being alone in the studio, to go from managing all these different lineups to just having all this fancy technology at his fingertips, where he could just make, again, a double album all by himself. That was freedom for him. So it's kind of odd that this was sandwiched between the release of Back to the Egg and the tour of
and a
Back
tour.
to the Egg.
All of this. Right. Sandwich. That's a great way to put it there. It's really in the middle of all this. Yeah, it's perfect. Club sandwich. Exactly that. Exactly that. So now he's got to prepare for a tour. Do you think he really was just tired with Wings, going through the motions? Because we interviewed Lawrence Juber on Two Legs, and they felt that the band was tight together. They were motivated. They loved the gigs. They gelled together very well. He did not feel like Wings was losing steam. But maybe deep down, Paul thought that they were. What do you guys think?
I don't think they were. I think he was fully committed to Wings at that time, because we know that Wings kind of went on till about 1981 before he called time on it. And I think that, you know, you've got to also remember that it turned out to be a very small UK tour, but the grand scheme was that he was going to Japan afterwards and then probably a world tour. So I think, I think that he was totally committed to Wings. He did, as I say, he did a lot of promotion for the album. I think that he was fully into, the Back to the Egg album at that time. I think maybe, retrospectively, he's not so happy with it, but
right.
I think at the time, he always used to say, when he used to be interviewed and stuff, people used to ask him what his favorite album was. And he always used to say the latest one.
The latest one.
Yeah, he always used to say that. Whether that's true or not, I don't know whether he really thought that or not. But obviously, it's, you know, things that are fresh are more exciting than things that are old, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I'll take the counterpoint there.
Yeah, Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll preface this by saying that I'm so excited to hear Tony's first hands across the water experience that nobody can take away from him. And that if I'm, you know, being critical about the tour or this time in his life, I have to, you know, like take it with a grain of salt, because even if you compare it to present day, we can, you know, break up or pick apart his current set list and be like, why doesn't he play this? Or like his voice is like this. But then like once you're there at like MetLife, you're like, can't buy me love, you know, like you're like going for it. So it's like, but at the same, like, so we love him, but it's also like he's a historical figure that we can kind of like, you know, think of critically. So I just preface that with that to say that I was reading a McCartney legacy that this kind of put it in perspective, that it didn't seem like they really rehearsed much for the tour. Do you remember that from the book? Yeah, and even the rehearsals they did do were kind of loose. And not only that, but a lot of it just felt like a rinse and repeat of Wings Over America on kind of like a smaller scale.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that, because this was pretty radical. This was a really radically different set list than Wings Over America.
Yeah, but it was the same like horn section and everything. They just like called up the same people.
Well, yeah, they got the horn guys back in, and the big hits were obviously Maybe I'm Amazed was plays, but this was a big departure set list wise.
Well, set list wise, of course. The set list, I can't wait to talk about that. The set list is of course.
Yeah.
You just you're just like, okay, Howie Casey and the brass guys, let's just do a small tour and just do it. That's what you're saying, rinse and repeat.
Like time to go on tour again. Like it didn't feel super inspired.
That was always the general thing for bands in the 70s, more so than it is now. You do an album and then you take it on the road and promote it. That's what happens. And I think only sort of mega stars like Paul McCartney can afford to put out an album and not tour it. You know,
correct.
You know,
I completely agree. I think it's just hard. You can really only compare it to like Wings Over America, which is just a difficult. That's a huge high bar. But listen, I'm not knocking it. I love it. Wings Last Flight, great bootleg, great bootleg. But let's move on to Tony's personal experience, because I these are just things that I'm learning about where Paul was in his life, and I really don't mean it to be negative. I just think it's interesting of this crossroads. You know, another Venus and Mars pun there.
There you go.
Where he was at in his professional career.
Tony, how did you find out about the tickets? Telly, ad, radio, what?
Well, the normal way of getting tickets for a gig was, so I used to buy music papers every week, and one of the things first page that I would look at when I got the papers would be the gigs, the announcement of gigs and stuff. And basically you had to, so that's how you would find out that a band were doing a tour or whatever. The normal way of getting tickets was to send us a check in a self addressed envelope. Off to the address. The address would be in the music paper. If you want tickets, you go here. It gave you the dates. You say, you know, I want 2 tickets, 3 tickets for, you know, the 13th of September at this whatever venue you wanted it at, and you send your check off, and you couple of weeks later, you'd get your envelope back, and it'd either have a couple of tickets in it or your check back. So when it was announced that Wings were doing a tour, I weren't taking any chances of just sending off a check. We went down to the venue the day that the box office opened for the tickets went on sale, and we queued up after night. It was a Sunday morning that they went on sale. We got there about 3-4 o'clock in the morning on the Saturday night and just got in a queue. And remember, this is, you know, it was probably around maybe October time. So, you know, they didn't have the big long lead up like we have these days for gigs. It's probably about maybe a couple of months at most before the gigs. So yeah, so that's how we got the tickets. So went down there, bought the tickets in the flesh because I just wasn't taking any chances of not getting a ticket.
And you didn't have to wait on queues for like 2 or 3 days to get tickets.
No, I mean obviously there was a queue there. When we got there, but we were fairly near the front, arriving at 4 o'clock in the morning for a 9 or 10 o'clock opening.
Wow.
It was a long way, and you know what it's like. You've been in these sort of queues. You're queuing with other fans. You talk to other fans. What's your favorite album? What songs you like? Blah blah blah. What other bands the time goes. The time goes.
So to kind of take us back in time, I've got a real nice vintage clip here from a show called Saturday Shake Up. And so let's watch these guys.
Yeah.
One of the nice things about being on Saturday Shake Up is that you get to meet some pretty famous people. Debbie Harry, Kate Bush, Queen, to mention 6 very pretty famous people. But today's rather special because I'm about to meet a man who is perhaps the most successful pop star ever. And today he's playing Newcastle City Hall. Tickets for tonight's show have been changing hands at fantastic prices. And it's not really surprising because inside those doors is a lad from Liverpool with his missus and a group you might have heard of called Wings. I'm talking, of course, about Paul McCartney. Right, lads, have you got tickets for tonight?
Yes.
You have. How long did you have to queue for those?
Weekend. Full weekend.
A whole weekend?
Yeah.
And the Monday as well. How much did they cost you?
£5.50.
So you got them for the normal price. Are you looking forward to tonight's show?
Yes. Really looking forward to it.
How long have you been a fan of Paul McCartney then?
Since you was a member of the Beatles.
Wow. $5.50. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, that was about the price. I'm guessing that the reason why I haven't seen that before is because back in the 70s, ITV, which is was the main commercial TV station, used to be regional. Okay, so that's taken from Newcastle. So that would have been Tyne Tees TV.
Okay.
Okay, and in London we got Thames TV.
Right.
So we wouldn't have seen that show. We would have had something different in London. It was very regional. There was lots of different companies that were all part of ITV.
Oh, okay, so you wouldn't have seen it then, yeah.
Yeah.
So Tony, being there at the time, I know you're 18 and the world's real big. Could you tell how Back to the Egg was received critically? Was it getting the same airplay that you're used to of Paul's stuff?
I don't think the album got much airplay. We didn't really have radio stations back then that would play a whole album. We had shows that would play album tracks from different artists, so non-singles then, but not you. I can't remember, being able to hear, a whole album in one go on the radio. I think that the Old Siam Sir got quite a bit of airplay.
Or even amongst your friends where, when you see him at lunch or something and you're like, what do you think of Back to the Egg? And they're like, oh, Mac has lost it, or oh, it's his best work yet. Like, what were they saying?
Not really. It's really just me and my mate Fraser. We were both in the Beatles, and of course, it's a brand new Wings album, so we obviously loved it at the time. I've got a different perception of it now, but at the time, I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Very,
Andy, when did you get into
exciting.
Back to the Egg?
Oh, probably in the mid 90s, early, same period that I was just after I kind of got through all the Beatles stuff, learned all that, and probably 8th grade, like 1994, 95-ish. It was one of those CDs that were really hard to find, even when the CD was the king format. Like you'd go to stores like Sam Goody and Nobody Beats the Wiz. I'm dating myself here. See, this is the generational aspect of the show. These two guys are like, fuck's he talking about? I don't know those stores, but I do. So Tony lives in England, and he wouldn't know American stores. And Kyle's 26 going, what the fuck is Nobody Beats the Wiz or Sam Goody? He doesn't know.
I have heard of Sam Goody.
No, but I'm saying you'd go and you'd see Band on the Run. You'd see Ram. You'd see Wings Over America. You'd see McCartney. But you could never friggin' find Back to the Egg. And this is the height of the CD era. What do you got there, Tony?
Yeah, let's see this.
When I was at work, there was a record store near me. Well, I used to go and buy records in there quite a lot during my lunchtime at work when I could afford, usually on payday. I used to ask him if I could have like the promotional stuff from the displays. At the end, I used to take them home on the tube, but he gave me they had these these. So these are the pictures from the back of the sleeve.
Yeah,
of back to the egg, but they're great big, great big versions of them. Huge things.
Wow.
They gave me those. I just thought I'd show them quickly.
How fun is that?
So record shops were pushing the album.
They were pushing the stuff, but you couldn't, for some reason in America, you couldn't find it. And by hook or by crook, one Christmas I ended up getting it. And this is the first run on CD that is out there. I don't know if Tony, you still have this version or you don't, or if it's different in England.
I think it's my one was a different one. I don't think it's on Capitol.
Right.
But I have got the Back to the Egg CD. In fact, I think the CD that I've got is the 1993 one, actually.
The 93. This is another one. This is a mini one. But the revelation, you had a bonus track of Daytime, Nighttime Suffering. And that was
Nice.
like, even then you're like, wow, how is this not on the album? And of course, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reggae and Wonderful Christmas Time. So for me, Back to the Egg kind of always has like a little bit of an association with Christmas because Wonderful Christmas Time was on it too. So those are kind of good memories with the album. But
Tony, just to go back to the perception at the time, and I know you weren't taking notes in 1979 thinking you'd be on an intergenerational Beatles podcast in 25.
No, I knew that was my destiny, right?
Yeah, you did. Okay, good. Yeah. But like, even if you can try and compare this to like the release of Tug of War, which I know today is much better critically accepted than Back to the Egg. Like, do you think that there was just more of like a McCartney feeling in the air compared to that?
Yes, I think so for Tug of War, because people were generally interested in what Paul would bring out as his next album after John's death. And so I think there was a wider spread of interest when Tug of War came out. When Back to the Egg came out, it was, oh no, not him again, sort of
just
thing.
Another Paul album.
Yeah, just another Wings album. Yeah.
And the tour being so small, I mean, it almost harkens back to the first Wings University tour, which was very small, where they just went around colleges. And in between, like they kind of bookend, right? The very first Wings tour was a very small, kind of organic, homespun, grassroots tour. Now, this obviously they're much more professional, but they were still very small scale tours. So that's a very interesting aspect of Wings too, right? Their first and last tours end up being relatively small ones, and in the middle, they've sandwiched and built up and exploded it at this kind of zenith in 75, 76, and then have kind of downward and done a very small scale tour. Tony mentioned earlier in the show, could it have been a world tour later on after Japan? And Lawrence Juber often says we were going to be going to America more than likely after Japan with a number one in our back pocket with Coming Up. Could you imagine that?
Yeah.
It's kind of frozen in time with this 17-date tour that was only unique to the UK. And for my money, it's still one of the more rewarding shows to listen to.
And also the selection of venues is not typical of a rock star of McCartney's level. So really, only the Wembley Arena shows were big shows.
As you said, 8,000.
All
right.
the others, Manchester Apollo, that we just saw on the video, Newcastle City Hall. There was also as I said, the Rainbow in London, Lewisham Odeon. All of these other venues, Glasgow Apollo, they're all 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000 seaters maximum. Probably less than 4,000, probably 3,000 max. All of them, apart from Wembley. So it's unusual to do so many dates at so many small venues.
Wasn't the first one like for the school kids, or was that not technically part of the tour?
It's not part of it. That he did the Liverpool Institute, didn't he?
It's just funny that he just conquered the world with Wings Over America, and then the next pretty much big show he does is literally for free for school kids.
Right. He does a free show at the Royal Court Theatre. Okay. And then then a proper one. Well, 3. No, how many nights? 4 nights at the Royal Court Theatre. 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you're saying the first gig, Tony, was the one for the school, right?
Yeah, the Liverpool Institute. That was it. I think he did a free gig at the school, and that was like a warm up, I suppose.
Right, and then so
Right.
4 in Liverpool, 2 in Manchester at the Apollo, 1 in Southampton at the Gaumont, 1 in Brighton, then into London at the Lewis and Odeon Rainbow Theatre at Empire Pool.
Yeah, that's Wembley. That
Okay, that's the Wembley. Okay, into Birmingham, back up to Birmingham, Newcastle, then all the way up to Scotland and with Edinburgh, and then closing 2 at Glasgow. And not on here is obviously the concert for Kampuchea. And wasn't there an opening act too, Earl Oaken?
I'd never heard of him, but what I do remember, and this is mental, this is bizarre that I remember this, but I know he did a song that went something like, Jesse, 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 take your fat arm off me. That was one of his songs. And why I remember that, I don't know. I suppose it's quite memorable because you don't get many songs like that. But it was, very short set. And just sort of going back to the venue sizes, that's why those Geordie blokes queuing up outside Newcastle City Hall had to stay there all weekend because they were probably queuing up for a 2,000 to 3,000 seater venue.
Okay.
So they had to get there early to make sure that they got their tickets. So they were there all weekend waiting for the box office to open.
That's interesting, learning about the different venue sizes in England, because they're generally very small to begin with anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, and as we now know, we were just there in December, that the Co-op is the largest arena in the UK now, isn't it?
Is it bigger than the O2 now? I don't know.
I think I had read that, but you go back to 1979 and you go to all these venues, 2,000, 3,000.
Yeah.
8,000 is like wow, that's the big one that's everybody's going to go to.
Yeah, there was Earl's Court as well, which I think was bigger. But Earl's Court was notoriously bad sound. It wasn't a great venue, and it held more than Wembley Arena or Empire Pool, as it was called back then. There was Earl's Court, but apart from that, they were really the 2 biggest venues. But Earl's Court obviously not on this tour.
Before we continue on with Tony's memories, was Billy Connolly a part of every show, or was that just one gig?
Just the Kampuchea gig.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if he was a part of every show.
No, he wasn't.
Kyle was like, "Who's Billy Connolly?"
Now I know.
He looks like he could have been a Monty Python guy.
He was just a Scottish comedian that came to fame. He was kind of discovered by Michael Parkinson. Parkinson had him on his show, and he just exploded. He was very popular.
I was just thinking, when you're talking about it being just these smaller venues, I obviously I love playing the what if game of Wings Mark 1 stayed the same throughout all the 70s.
Ooh.
Maybe they'd be due to go back to England, but would he go back to small venues? Does he have an affinity for small venues, or does he just keep getting new bands and just wanting to like start from scratch, start from the bottom and work his way up?
I'm wondering whether the whole premise of this UK tour was to try out this band live before going on to bigger things like, Japan and the US or whatever.
Right.
I think that could have been the reason. I don't know. It's difficult to try and second guess it, especially so long after the fact, I suppose.
Yeah, well, it's just funny that he's obviously such a big superstar that could probably sell out anywhere, even during this time. And he just loves this idea of having this ragtag band and starting them, in the cavern like the Beatles did. He's just, it's funny that I'm excited for us to talk about the set list and the Beatles picks that he chooses. But I think he just always has that nostalgia for bringing back those days.
He loves being in a band, closeness of being in a band, even though he's the boss and he's in charge. He loves that feeling of just getting in a car, getting in a van and loading up and doing a gig. I mean, that is something that has stayed with him to this day. I mean, you see it with his current band. He loves doing that. And that kind of starting from the ground up thing is something that this is probably what it was going to be, Kyle. You're right, just to test the waters. I often wonder though too, like, because I've done a lot of reading about like Linda just really not liking touring, and they had just had James, and I don't know if she would have gone for it. We're going to do a tour where it's just going to be a small tour of the UK. We don't have to leave the country. We'll be near our kids all the time, and that was important to them at this time. It really was, and still do the gigs and all that other stuff too. So let's talk set list. Going into the show, Tony, did you know the set list ahead of time?
No, not a clue.
You didn't. So you went in cold.
I did go in cold, and didn't have a clue what. But I might have known some of the songs because there would have been reviews of the earlier shows, because by the time they got to Wembley, they'd already done Liverpool, Manchester, Southampton, Brighton, Lewisham, and the Rainbow. So there must have been a review in one of the music papers of their gig, but it wouldn't have mentioned every song. It would have just mentioned a few. I would have thought.
Yeah, but still, to have that excitement of not really knowing it and going in there and hearing the horn intro, and then boom, hearing "Got to Get You Into My Life" for the first time. Paul has played that outside of the Beatles. Now he's playing it with Wings. I mean, that must have been like just a moment, like we were like, oh my God, I'm seeing Paul McCartney and he's playing a Beatles song to open up a Wings gig.
Yeah, I mean, it's you've got the first thing that you hear is the horn section, da 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 da, and then as the sort of the drums come in, then Paul then comes onto the stage, and then the crowd erupts, and you think, oh my God, I'm breathing the same air as Paul McCartney out of the Beatles. And that was an incredible moment.
Rocking that bass.
The Yamaha.
And it's worth noting that the cover image for Legacy 2 is of Paul holding the Yamaha bass from the UK tour.
Yeah,
so
it is.
It comes out. And I will say too, before we keep going into the set list, one of the great, I would say, things that just you wish it could have happened and they didn't get done was this concert was not properly filmed, and that's a shame. There's great bits on YouTube here and there, and Kampuchea is the most complete thing you've got, but it's a real shame that after filming and producing Rock Show and all that Wings Over the World stuff, there's so much great video footage from all those shows, we couldn't get one of these gigs filmed and preserved from. That's a shame.
I think that they filmed the Kampuchea gig in its entirety because there was the footage that you've seen from Kampuchea. I think there's about 6 songs. That was a TV show that was a compilation of the concerts for Kampuchea. So not just Wings, but the Queen and the Clash and the Who, who all did sets. So I think that they must have recorded every show in its entirety to be able to come up with a best of compilation. That's my thoughts on it.
But did they play a full set list at Kampuchea, or was it a small truncated set?
Yeah, no, it was the same set, apart from Wonderful Christmas Time had gone because Christmas had come and gone.
Right.
So it was the 29th of December, so Christmas was out the window. So they didn't play Wonderful Christmas Time at Kampuchea, and Let It Be moved from the main set to the encore.
Okay.
He did Let It Be with Rockestra.
Oh, so it almost was, because a lot of the boots out there only give you Got to Get You Into My Life, Every Night, Coming Up, Lucille, Let It Be, and Rockestra. But I think that's the stuff that's pulled from the video performance that's circulating out there.
Yeah, the Rockestra stuff is just Kampuchea. That was the only time that happened. Yeah.
Big time for Beatle firsts in this set list, as we just mentioned with Got to Get You Into My Life. Yeah. Not only that, Fool on the Hill and Let It Be, the aforementioned, make their day. And yesterday he already played, but Let It Be and Fool on the Hill make their debut from Wings, and that had to be another wow moment of hearing the Fool on the Hill.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it's up there in my list of Beatles songs. I love Fool on the Hill, and obviously Let It Be as well. And it was fantastic to hear him singing it, knowing that he'd never done this, never played those songs before. To apart from the gigs earlier in the tour, but to hear them was fantastic.
Kyle, I want to get your take on this because I'm waiting for a hot take, and I know a hot take's coming from you at some point. I know it.
Sure.
Do you think, for some odd reason, he includes "Hot as Sun" from the McCartney album on here? Why? Who knows? And we talked about in our pre-show chat. Remember Tony going, "Why? That's such an odd song to play at the time. It's like, why would you include that song in a set list?" But now you've got things like that. You've got Every Night, and of course you've got Maybe I'm Amazed. Do you, hand on the run, think Paul was subconsciously looking past Wings at this moment?
Yes, 1,000%. Well, also, I wonder if he's looking at Hot as Sun and Every Night because he just recorded McCartney 2, that he's thinking about his first self-titled album more favorably. And another thing that I think is very odd about this set list is that what I love about all these 3 main Wings tours is that we're getting a lot of Wings that we don't get to hear kind of throughout the rest of his career. The college tour is just all it can be is Wildlife. The Europe tour, we had Red Rose Speedway, Wildlife, and Ram. Wings Over America, it's predominantly Venus and Mars. And then in the 79 tour, sure, it's Back to the Egg Heavy because that just came out, but we don't get a lot of representation from London Town and Wings at the Speed of Sound. You get Cook of the House, and there's a lot of great stuff from London Town that totally could have fit here. Like Morse Moose and the Grey Goose would have been a crazy rocker. I mean, I don't think he's ever played with a Little Luck live. Isn't that another crazy fact?
It was rehearsed. Would have been hard to pull off. I mean, big hit, but that's not the one you're playing. You're playing I've Had Enough, which is a rocker.
Yeah, and I'm not knocking I've Had Enough. I'm just saying that there's plenty of great stuff. Like you could have played Famous Groupies or something during an acoustic set. So I guess in the lens of looking past Wings, instead of filling up the set list with these past 2 Wings albums, even if they weren't the same exact lineup he currently has with his tour, instead he's replacing them with McCartney self-titled, Beatles tracks, 20 Flight Rock.
Yeah,
so
right. Why?
So I think that is kind of another tick in the column of moving on.
Moving on.
which is a really interesting crossroads to see him at. And I'm jealous that Tony got to see it. If this tour was more heavy on the 3 albums since Wings Over America, like imagine we got Silly Love Songs or something.
But, and
What?
I agree with you. Silly Love Songs, I think he felt, you know what, I've just had a huge hit with that. I've just gone all over the world playing that song. I can put that to bed. Since then, he's got 2 pretty successful songs. One is still the most non-charity best-selling single of all time with Mull of Kintyre that he's working into the set list, and also riding the wave of Good Night Tonight. Okay, it wasn't a number 1, but it was a pretty good successful single. So those are 2 big songs in this set list that he's got to work into it. And thank God he did. I mean, Good Night Tonight absolutely has got to be one of the highlights. It's the only time he's played it. Was the 70th. It's the only time he's played Good Night Tonight. Post Wings Over America hits with Mull of Kintyre and Good Night Tonight that he's got to work in there. And let's not forget Wonderful Christmas Time, which he did during the McCartney 2 sessions by himself in Scotland. So that's another song. But it's credited to Paul McCartney, but when you watch the video, Wings are all over it.
Right. And it's kind of just the singles that he's playing from Back to the Egg and also, Good Night Tonight and Coming Up.
Which was not out yet.
But again, it's still all, like, he's not playing After the Ball, I think that would have been a great belter, ballad. But
I mean,
he's not playing it.
How many tracks from Back to the Egg? Getting Closer, again and again and again.
Old Siam,
sir.
If you count Rocker.
Spin It On.
Spin It On. Arrow Through Me.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I was absolutely delighted to be able to see, Paul McCartney, 4 times, in the flesh for the first time. But, back then I didn't kind of analyze these things like I do now. But I can remember being a tad disappointed with this set list.
At the time.
At the time, because I treated Wings Over America like a training course in going to see Paul McCartney live. So I played it over and over again, and only 3 songs from the Wings Over America tour survived this set. Consider this: only 2 songs from Band on the Run in this set list.
Isn't that amazing?
No Jet and no Let Me Roll It.
Yeah, no Let Me Roll It. The only tour that it did not appear in.
Yeah.
So what is it? No Words is
no words and Band on the Run.
But No Words gets a rare air. Like, you've got these little gems that get dusted off like hot as sun. No Words gets pulled out of thin air. But Tony's going there having digested all 3 discs of Wings Over America. He could probably quote it backwards and forwards by this point in 1979. And he goes there hoping maybe to hear Venus and Mars or Jet or Silly Love Songs or Listen to What the Man Said or Let Him In. And he heard none of them. So he's probably like 18-year-old Tony's probably like, damn, I didn't hear these big hits.
Yeah. Not one song from Venus and Mars.
No.
Right. I wonder if he's just tired with it or what. I mean, now he has no problem with playing the hits that he knows people love.
I mean, it was probably a bit of fatigue because, on the Wings Over the World tour, he virtually played the whole album.
Right.
Apart from 3 songs.
Got to give it a rest.
Right. He probably said, look, I've done this to death. That was another band. I'm with new guys now. I don't want to probably play a lot of that material. Let me pick out some random stuff from the 50s or these obscurities that I mean, and No Words is sweet because that's the first song that Denny and Paul wrote together. And I love that song from Band on the Run got an airing. We can look at it as iconic now, but I could see why Tony would be like, I'm just a little disappointed in this set list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I could like you suggest, Andy, take the opposite standpoint and say that, I saw shows where he played songs that he's never played before or since.
Exactly.
So there is that.
Yeah.
There is that.
Yeah. Well, I have to also add Alan Kozin, of course, got to credit this to him and Adrian Sinclair. He mentioned in Legacy that this set list is kind of like a biography of Paul's life.
Yes.
Not only does he play 20 Flight Rock, which is his audition song for how he got into the proto Beatles and the Quarrymen. He's playing Beatles songs. He's playing things from McCartney. So it is very representative of his full career that I think we can appreciate looking back.
Totally.
Although, well, you say that, but there's nothing from Ram, there's nothing from Wildlife, nothing from Red Rose Speedway, and nothing from Venus and Mars. So
okay, whole career is a strong word.
That's four albums out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 albums. That's half.
So I guess I would refine what I'm trying to say by correcting myself. I think that the What the F picks don't seem as much like What the F picks, like 20 Flight Rock and Hot as Sun, when you look at it through that lens.
Tony, you've got some goodies from the tour and memorabilia. What have you got from the 1979 tour that you can show us?
I can show you the program. So that's the dates and a little picture of Wings there.
Does it say stay tuned for more of the archive series?
No, it doesn't. So you got those from the rehearsal, and then from the Good Night Tonight shoot. Then you get on to a bit about the band, and then some more pics.
Okay, very cool.
And the tour logo.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then the what we used to call pen pictures. Do you used to call them that in America? Pen pictures. It's where you got where you've got a little tiny biography with a picture of the person there.
Okay.
So they're kind of these you can tell by what they're wearing that they're rehearsing rather than being in shows. There's that picture there, which obviously that's from Limp Castle, and this one here ended up on the coming up single.
Yep.
And then on the back page, you've just got sort of Wings over the UK. You see the Wings getting closer and closer to the UK, and then we gotta
incorporate that in our thumbnail, Kyle. We gotta take a picture of that Wings over the UK, and we gotta make that part of the thumbnail.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool.
That's a great image. Wow.
And then the concert for Kampuchea program is there. So there's not much to show you there. That's the lineup for the 3 was it 3 or 4 nights?
Yeah.
It's the Queenie and Jury, the Who and Wings were the headliners. And then you've just got pictures of all those bands, and then you've just got that for Wings. So the concert for Kampuchea was very hastily arranged because the disaster happened, and then the next week the concerts were being done. So obviously there wasn't a big program. It was all done very, very hastily. And don't ask me how I got tickets for the concert at Kampuchea, because I have no idea. I cannot remember. I know I didn't have anything to do with it. My mate got them, and I just turned up. But we were so pleased to have those tickets, because that was at the Hammersmith Odeon, which is a smallish venue, about 2,000 to 3,000 capacity for that. So that's those little bits of memorabilia.
I must say, Tony, 46 years worth later, you've preserved those pretty well.
Yeah, I've kept all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit, it's a bit creased.
A little bit, but I tell you, it's not for 46 years old. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I used to sellotape my tickets inside the programs back then, but I don't know where they are. They're not here.
I wonder. See, sometimes they reproduce these things. You can find them on eBay or original ones. Original ones probably go for quite a lot of money now, but heck, I'd even buy a reproduced fake one just to have it, just because the images. There's a nice book.
Yeah. So the other bit of memorabilia that I've got is quite spectacular. It's quite spectacular. So there's always got to be a story. And so the Wings ended the set with Good Night Tonight. and you know he used to do this thing where he used to bring out the the little robot, the drum machine. The drum machine shaped like a robot, and he did the whole thing. You know, he's even back then he was still saying this, doing the same in between song banter every show. You know, he used to say, and it's a very technical thing, and you've got to treat it with love and care. And then he just kicks it, and it starts. Just gives it a boot, and it starts. Anyway, so Good Night Tonight. This is the last song, and on the first night we were there, you know, everybody, when Good Night Tonight started, everybody ran to the front, almost, so they were almost back to where we were sitting, because there's not much dance room at Wembley Arena, just in the aisles sort of thing. So we just stayed where we were. But when we went the second night we went, we knew exactly what was going to happen as soon as we got to the penultimate song, we were ready. We were already at the end of our row, ready to run down the front. And so when they played Good Night Tonight, so we ran down the front, and at the end of the song, because it was the last song in the set, Steve Holley threw his drumsticks into the crowd, and I wrestled with someone to get it, and this is it. And I don't know if you can see. Can you see this?
Now I can see
those little divots there.
Wow.
So I keep this in a plastic bag. And I, stupidly, I kind of, you know, I cleaned it up a little bit, you know, because it was a little bit dirty, and I wish I hadn't really, because really the dirt is caused by, you know, the sweat of his hands, you know. But these little divots here, you see
There you go, Tony.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, these little divots there. So that is where the stick has hit the hi-hat or the cymbal. It makes these little divots and takes little chunks out of it. And you know, you look at it and you think, this thing that I'm holding was used to keep Paul McCartney out of the Beatles in time. So it's just an amazing thing. And you know, I've never used it to actually drum with, but you know, it's just something to keep.
You've got to work that into the Beatley Tone studio there and have that thing on. You got to put a shelf, behind, like next to one, and display it, and just be like, Steve Holley's drumstick, December 1979. And have it there, and then it'll be in the background of all your shows, and you got another talking point. You say, I've got a member of Wings drumstick that I got after Good Night Tonight.
Yeah.
How cool is that? I love that story, Tony.
It's really cool. I was just really lucky, really lucky to be in the right place at the right time.
Totally. I love that story, Tony.
Third night, we still ran down the front, didn't get anywhere near a drumstick then.
You ran down there for the closing number of the song, and he closes out his main set with Good Night Tonight. And I'm glad you mentioned it, because there is the only footage that we have of the UK tour from 79 is about a minute and a half of Good Night Tonight that's been pro shot. And I think I've watched this video probably 1,000 times, because it's just Paul with the Yamaha bass jumping up and down to Good Night Tonight. And if you could just see the joy in that man's eyes radiating out of his body as he's playing this song, bopping all over the place, I could imagine Tony like just losing your shit. I mean, incredible. Let's watch this for a minute.
Has he played this since? Is this still in his set list?
No. Now, I did a bit of research. He did play this in 2012. There's a video on YouTube of him down in South Africa or something, and he does like this reggae version of Good Night Tonight with some other with other musicians, but it's like very loose, and it's like a reggae version, but it's not. But that's out there. It was around 2012, and he was with some band. He was supporting some band somewhere, and they were playing it, and he just joined it with them to play it.
See.
Right, but this is the last time that we saw Good Night Tonight, and Tony, our host, saw this. Damn, I am jealous of you.
This is so cool.
Take your stick.
That's the stick.
The ball plugs were up the top there.
Oh,
Do you know what venue that's from?
that's from Glasgow.
Oh, Glasgow. Okay.
Yeah, that's
That is so fun. So let me ask you guys
That's really
a
good.
hot take
Really good.
question. So Paul has so many great non-album singles in the 70s and 80s. In my opinion, I think that Good Night Tonight, Daytime, Nighttime Suffering is the best A-side, B-side. I like it better than Junior's Farm, Sally G. I love Once Upon a Long Ago too, but I think that for my money, this is the best single or non-album single.
non-album single.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a hot take or is that a lukewarm take?
It's fairly lukewarm, I would say.
All right, I got another one coming up.
I think it's right. It's probably right.
So good.
I'm just trying to think.
Tony, you hadn't seen that video till I shared it to you the other day.
No,
right?
I hadn't seen it. No, I've never seen that.
I can't believe you never.
It's fantastic.
Isn't that
It's
great
fantastic.
Does that
quality?
take you back?
Does that seem like a man that's bored of wings?
No.
I think so.
He always gives it 100. Come on, you wouldn't be able to tell.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot now with a little trivia with that last song that our buddy Down Under, Boyan Archer, I shared this with him because we were chatting one night about the lyrics of this song. And we just sussed out do you know what they're saying with that robot voice in the lyrics?
Is it I don't want to go home or something like that? I don't want to go home.
I gotta go home.
Oh, I got to go home. Okay.
30 years listening to this song, I didn't realize that's actually, it's like the vocoder or whatever they're using on the song.
Yeah, it's like a synthesized voice.
I said to Boy, I just sussed out what the lyric is. It's I gotta go home. And Boy says, I'll never hear that song the same way again now.
Yeah.
So it's like a conversation. It's like the robot saying I gotta go home and Paul saying like don't say goodnight.
Yeah.
Right. I never realized that till like
Interesting.
a few weeks ago.
How
Crazy.
fun.
I think it's the same instrument that ELO used on Mr. Blue Sky. Please turn me over, isn't it?
That's exactly
It's
right.
a synthesized voice type thing.
Yeah. But great memories and love that. Can you imagine? That's what I'm saying. It's just I can't believe we can't see more footage of that. That's a minute and 48 seconds, but awesome clip. Kampuchea closes out the tour, and as I learned just doing this show today, it was a full set. So I always thought it was a truncated set, but you got to see Wings at Kampuchea on the 29th, Tony.
29th of December, yeah.
Right. And that's the version that's on, I think, the version of Rockestra where he basically says Happy New Year at the end of it, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, looking back on it, did you think, wow, this band's going to continue? They're going to go on, and all of a sudden,
yeah, absolutely. I didn't think that was the last that we'd see of Wings.
Well, take us back to when Rockestra came on stage.
Okay, so basically the whole concert for Kampuchea, the Wings night, it was surrounded by rumors that the Beatles were going to turn up. People were saying John's in Britain and Ringo's in Britain and George is here. They're going to turn up and they're going to come on and play. It's going to be the Beatles reunion, and it just seems ridiculous now. But at that time, if enough people said it loud enough, you kind of believed it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people, people were talking about it. They were talking about it outside of outside Hammersmith Odeon, in the foyer, in the bar, and all this sort of stuff. And when it came down to it, so Wings go off. They finish their set, same as usual with Good Night Tonight. And I think, or was it? Did they? Yeah, I think it was a Good Night Tonight. And they go off, and Billy Connolly comes onto the stage. He pulls out a piece of paper from his back pocket, and he says something along the lines of, "You people don't know how lucky you are for what you're about to see." And me and my mate, we're nudging each other. We're going, this is it. We're going to see it. And he starts reading off this list of names, and it's a stellar list of names. You've got, John Paul Jones and Robert Plant, who had already appeared on the show with Dave Edmunds' Rockpile. I believe, and Robert Plant, John Bonham, Kenny Jones, and Pete Townsend from the Who, Hank Marvin, Ronnie Lane from the Faces, various Elvis Costello attractions, Dave Edmunds and Nick Lowe from Rockpile. So it was a cast, those are the names that you're reading out, and you're thinking, well, I'm kind of seeing like the best lineup on one stage since probably the concert for Bangladesh or something like that.
That's a hot take. There's a hot take.
Hot take. Playing together as one band. I'm not sure what other massive lineups there were, but there was a lot of people. There was a lot of people on the stage, and but you couldn't, and you're seeing this fantastic lineup of people, but you couldn't help feeling a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, I just feel like when your expectations are set that high.
Yeah, it wasn't a bit. Honestly, the rumors were rife. Mm-hmm. But it was still brilliant to witness. Pete Townsend, wouldn't wear his silver top hat, because he's far too important and far too grown up to do that. But brilliant.
Before we move on, I want to mention my hot takes about Rockestra.
Go.
So I think that it's clear. I don't think that this is a hot take, that Paul has had two worthy collaborators in his long career, John Lennon and Elvis Costello. Anytime he's ever collaborated with another big name, it's just been disappointing. I think David Gilmour being the big one of, like, you team up with one of your best friends, Dave, and just nothing ever good or nothing like great comes of it. And then it's just very like Paul to just call up everybody in his Rolodex and get this big orchestra of rock musicians together. And I think Rockestra, the theme, is kind of forgettable. I admittedly had that in my head all day because I've been listening to it for the show. But I think even still, like, it was a cool experiment for Paul to do. But on the other side of this token, I think that part of its problem was he didn't take it far enough. I think having it just as one instrumental track on Back to the Egg just puts it in a very odd context. I think that for the whole idea of what?
Hang on, this two.
No, because, and Tony, I know what you're going to say. That the Rockestra band plays on "So Glad to See You Here."
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know, but still, that's not really a lot more than that. That's.
Yeah.
I mean, I stand corrected, but my point was that I wish that Paul took this idea of having an orchestra of rock instruments to its extreme. Just make like a whole instrumental album. And how cool would it be if you tour, go to Carnegie Hall and all of the big, Philharmonics around the world with, I mean, obviously you can't do that with, half of Led Zeppelin and the Who, etc. But just, take it as far as it can go. Just doing a song and a half on Back to the Egg, I feel like. I mean, what do you think of Rockestra? I think it's kind of a forgettable tune.
Not me.
No, not me either. All
right.
I think one thing that you've got to consider with this is because of getting all those people in the same place at the same time, not easy around that time, because they're all big names. They're all
Of
big
course.
names. So getting them all in the same room at the same time is not easy. So there probably wasn't that much time to work on this stuff. And also when you've got that many people to record at once, it's got to be fairly simple. Otherwise, who I'm playing lead guitar. No, I'm playing lead guitar. No, I'm playing lead guitar. And it's that kind of thing. So it's got to be fairly simple. I think. I mean, I like both of those tracks, to be honest. I like them a lot better than some of the stuff on Back to the Egg, for sure.
I just think that the logistics, again, I take your point, but it just becomes more of a fun fact and not like, oh, do you know that crazy epic orchestra rock by half of Led Zeppelin and the Who, and conducted by Paul McCartney? Like, I think it just could have been a lot more grandiose. But yeah, I take your point. Like, is this the maximum he could have done under these circumstances with these huge stars? Probably, but I don't know. That's my take.
It's really difficult to know, because there must have been all sorts of legal loopholes and stuff, because they're all signed to all different labels. So I think the thing about taking them on the road is probably out the question.
Not to mention, he filmed the performance without their knowledge and hid the cameras in EMI.
Oh, did he?
Oh, wow.
They didn't realize they were being filmed. And I think that's a big legal loophole why maybe some of this isn't out yet, because they didn't know they were being filmed. They hid the cameras behind the walls.
That's really interesting. Well, I guess for my whole tour theory, I think obviously you wouldn't be able to have it with these folks, but I think that Paul being a composer. No, I'm saying that the tour was impossible because you couldn't do it with these guys.
No,
stars.
It was an in joke. It was an in joke.
Oh, okay. But I just think that Paul he already had experience as a composer with Thrillington and everything, and he would later in his life make multiple albums as a composer. And so I think this is clearly something core to his being, that he's passionate about this music. And so I think that the idea of composing an orchestra of electric guitars and horns and 2 or 3 drum kits is really smart. And I think that I just don't think he took it far enough. I think he just had this one big star-studded show, which in my opinion it could be a phone ringtone. And
a orchestra is a ringtone. Wow.
I might actually do that.
You might actually do that. That interesting. Oh, okay. Andy's calling what?
I'll make it just for when you call me.
Just make it from when I call you. Yeah. So
yeah.
Good conversation, gentlemen. As we wind down, let us know. Did any of you attend any of these shows in 1979 along with Beatley Tone? Did you go? What did you love it, hated it, indifferent? Probably not too many of you probably got a chance to go see this. If you did, Andy, let us know. Go.
Did a redheaded 18-year-old steal a drumstick out from under your hands?
Because he wrestled the guy for it. So if you're out there,
I did wrestle for it. Can I just tell one more story from the gig? So when Denny was being introduced to do Go Now, the way that so Denny plays piano on Go Now, and the way that he gets to the piano it's a grand piano, but it's got the lid down. He takes a big run up to the piano and does a forward roll on top of the piano and lands on the seat.
What?
It's his party piece. It's his party piece.
Does this.
He does a forward roll
right
on the piano and lands on the seat.
Classic.
Wow. This is why we need this on video.
Yeah.
Damn. Wow.
Yeah.
See, all kinds of stuff that happened on this tour that we don't know about because it wasn't filmed for posterity. Tony, what is up with Beatley Tone's Beatles channel? What have you got cooking these days?
I've got a new item to show this week. that arrived in the post, and I'll be doing a video on that. And if I get time to do another video this week, I'll probably be doing a deep dive video on one of the albums. So
Love your deep dives.
But obviously, this could be interrupted by news about this or news about that. We'll have to wait and see whether the mono box gets another airing, or what. You never know. You never know what could be coming down the pipeline.
We don't. Hand on the Run, Instagram. What's the activity is hot and heavy on Instagram, buddy. 7,000 and change followers now. Well done.
No, of course. I
Really
will
good,
be
really good job.
Thank you. I mean, if you are looking for me, I'll just be bothering random people on the subway asking them who their favorite Beatle is. So if you're lucky, it might be you.
As for Two Legs, we just recorded a new episode this past week with Luca Perazzi, who will be a future guest on Hands Across the Water in a few weeks. And we just Luca's got another new book out, if you can keep up. He got a new book out on Press to Play, which is just out this past week. So I interviewed him for Two Legs. Tom wasn't available, so we just did it, and that's out. That'll be out in a couple days as well. And Luca will be on Hands Across the Water discussing this book in a few weeks. Ringo Starr, I Play the Piano If It's in C. And we're going to talk about Ringo with Luca. So that'll be in a few weeks' time right here on Hands Across the Water. So, gentlemen, if you have nothing else for good of the order.
All done.
All done.
Great show.
Great show, guys. So,
well done, everyone.
For Beatley Tone, the Hand on the Run, I'm Andy Nichols from Hands Across the Water. We will see you next time. Have a great week. Enjoy the music. Enjoy the Beatles. Enjoy Paul. Enjoy John, George, Ringo, all of it. Peace and love, everybody.
Yoko.
No!